Photoshop CS6 is packed with new features, and if you're curious, you could switch from the Essentials workspace to New in CS6. I am going to jump through a few of them. I will start by doing image adjustments and curves, and in fact, the menus, anything highlighted in blue, has been improved or has new features to it. So if I choose Curves in the Curves dialog, there is a new option under Option, and if I click Option, for the first time ever, they are now plotting points on the curves when you do automatic settings. I could switch to enhance the monochromatic contrast, enhanced per channel, adjusting the red, green, and blue on this image, find the darkest and lightest colors, and you could see in the background how this is affecting the image. In fact, I am click OK and scoop this window over to the right and click Options again. And if I simply hit Enhance Brightness and Contrast, you could see where it mapped a point for me, and I could specify target colors if I wanted to do so, or make a new default. But I will click OK, and click OK again, and just hit Commence Z or Control Z to see a little before and after. Looking at the new in CS6 workspace, Many Bridge has been improved, and if I go back to Essentials, it's typically docked at the bottom. So now I'm looking at all of my assets in our Chapter 1 folder. I will double-click to collapse that and go back to New in CS6, and the layers have been improved. Now this document contains no layers, so I am going to close it, and I won't save the changes. This story document is actually a video. Now, with Photoshop Standard, you do not need to purchase Extended, but with Standard, you can do very easy video editing. So if I look at layers, I could see I actually have a 3D layer. 3D does require Photoshop Extended, so you won't be able to do that. But I can also see that I have a background layer, and in the Layers panel, you can filter by kind, by a layer name, by effects that are applied, or layer blending modes, or a specific attribute or layer color that you have given. In fact, if you have smart objects in the document, I could filter by smart objects only. By vector layers, what used to be called shape layers are now known as vector layers, and they are just that shapes that you could edit or redefine. So I have no smart objects, I have no shape layers, I have no type layers. If you had adjustment layers on, you could see only those or pixel layers. If I turn this filter, story, 3D text, and the background both have pixels. So these are your new filtering options, which is immensely helpful if you do app mockup or mobile mockup, just to get to the right layer when you're dealing with documents that have hundreds of layers. I am going to clear the filter by hitting this little red box. If I go to the Adjustments panel, you no longer see the settings or a layer in the Adjustments panel, and I am going to close this story document. So if I wanted to do an adjustment on this, in fact, this image is one from Chapter 9, where we actually show the improved iris blur, or you could actually do multiple iris blurs that radiate out from the couple and radiate out from the hue, blurring everything here. Now, if I wanted to add an adjustment layer, let's say to do a color overlay, so it gets a hue over top of the image. I can pause over each icon in Adjustments until I find the exact one that I'm looking for, and I am going to Hue and Saturation. But when you do adjustments now, the Adjustments panel for quick way to get there and Properties is brand new. What you used to adjust in Adjustments is now controlled in Property, and Property is used for a lot more stuff. It will actually show you 3D properties, but here in the Properties panel, I am on Hue and Saturation, and I am going to hit Colorize, and I will aim for a little bit of the sepia tone an oranges looking image to make this look aged. If I go back to the Layers panel and I were to filter back down on Adjustment Layers, I could see just the hue and saturation has been added. I won't say this either. I am just giving you a tour, and I should have mentioned that at first, but the biggest difference is the overall interface. There is a new dark interface. In fact, I have been using Photoshop now for a couple months, and when I go back to CS5, it feels old to me with the white tools and the light-colored panels. If you don't love the dark interface, you can right-click anywhere on the gray, and this has actually been there for a few versions, but I could go back to a light gray background, for example, or back to the default, or through Photoshop Preferences on the Mac, or Edit Preferences interface on Windows. You can actually change the overall color theme, so I can choose the darkest, the default, or a lightest interface, which will change the panels and the tools as well. I am going to leave it on the default and click OK. And I will close this image and I won't save the changes. Lighting effects have been dramatically improved, and it happened right now directly on the stage. So I put a green light on her face and a white spotlight on the spot on her hair. CS6 also added under the filter menu a new oil paint filter. So when you are in the new CS6 workspace, I could see under blur, the field blur, iris blur, and tilt shift, or under render that you can now do lighting effects directly on your image, on your canvas or stage. You don't work for your plugin dialog. So you could take some time to surf through each of the menus and see what has been added in the new CS6 workspace. But in that shot, if I zoom in a bunch, I can actually see an oil paint filter has been added. So if I wheel up, there is the family oil painted, and if I scroll back to the left, there is the original shot. So I just put them side by side so you could see the difference. A very powerful new filter that's automatically included. You used to have to install to separately with the Pixel Bender set. I will close this, and hue, for anyone who does web mockups and Mobo mockups, we now have paragraph style, where you could see I have several added for this document, and character style, where I have a bold character style. So in paragraph styles, if I wanted to change all of my heading, I could double-click on heading and maybe change my font to something else. Let's just go to Hobo. Not that looks good, but just a bit of the radically different. And once I switched it to the Hobo and click OK, anything that is used in O2 heading style automatically gets updated to Hobo. It looks like it was only used this in individual spot. I will undo that, but there were quite a few paragraph styles which are great for global edits, and in fact, I am just not even going to save the changes to this. I will close it, and I hit Don't Save. They added underneath the Patch tool a new content-aware Move tool, and all I did to move this couple from the right side of the image was select them and with content-aware Move, drag them to the left side. So this is the original shot. This is after the content-aware Move, and Repose is now gone. In the Layers panel, I have a 3D layer, and if I select the 3D object with the Move tool, all my 3D tools are now on the Move tool. They are separate tools on the toolbar, because that's really what you are doing, is moving the 3D object, and the Properties panel shows information relative to 3D objects. The brushes have been improved, and there is more options. There are more brush presets. In fact, they have included a number of John Derry. Derry, he had brush presets providing for years that are now included out of the box. So Google John Derry. DERRY, and you will see some outstanding use for Photoshop brushes. The timeline got a little easier, and if I am in the Essentials workspace at the top, you will see that the mini bridge and timeline are now together at the bottom left on my window, and those are most of the new features in Photoshop CS6. So take some time to switch to the new in CS6 workspace. Surf through your menu to see what's improved and what added, and I should mention for the photographers out there, Context Sheet is back. It's no longer a separate installed. You can build Photoshop Context Sheets by pointing to a folder of images. But take some time, surf through the menu, look at the panels on the right to see what is improved and what is changed, and I am sure you will love Photoshop CS6 as much as I did.